Quick question for Dr. Groves. Your research was very interesting, and I was curious if you've had a chance to look further into commonalities with talented people, or what's considered to be, who is considered to be talented. For example, I've heard in the past from different economic professors that three indicators of highly successful people are height, economical family background, and education. Of the three, you only have a choice of one. I was curious about other characteristics like race, sex, education, common interest, background, stuff like that. And the second part of that question, second part of that question is, over time, as our culture changes due to external impacts, do you see some of those commonalities changing? A big impact would be pop culture and how that impacts the way we think and what we do. Another might be something like war. So I'm just curious every time as well.
Excellent question, very interesting. From my perspective, the work in human capital management, human resource professionals and industry has shied away or has gotten away from a trait-like perspective, not just for selecting high potential, talented employees, in large part because we like to think we add value in developing people both from a business school perspective but also in industry. So I would say in large part the emphasis has been less on identifying these trait-like characteristics that are fairly well ingrained once you reach adulthood. More so on one characteristic I've seen is learning agility. Some of the real industry leaders in human capital management, PepsiCo, for example, has started to look at one characteristic that really predicts talent is this ability to learn in new environments, and can somehow capture and be able to measure learning agility. That gives us much better success rate when it comes to identifying high potentials, putting them in the right experiences. So as interesting certainly as some of these demographic and more trait-like characteristics are, from my vantage point I've seen a lot less emphasis on that end, in part because we want to believe that we can add value in developing capabilities, and we're not fixed properties once we reach adulthood. That's my very optimistic view, I think, of the perspective.
This question is for the entire panel. As experts, each one of you almost talked about talent management as well as silo thinking. So I'm trying to link the two. In your experience, is there a way to get rid of silos and identify the talents that are in every organization, especially a large one, that you can share with us today?
I'll take that one. So yes, there are, and a breakthrough has been the link to incentivizing the executives, so you get what you measure. And so over the past 5 years, we've continued to raise the bar with regards to adding to that level of objective. And part of it is also bringing leaders forward together in a collaborative effort, like a meeting that may look like this room, where we're going through, as what Kevin suggested in the 9-box activity, to talk about performance and potential. And for all of our leaders to get a viewpoint and perspective of how is my leader or successor showing up in other venues, and what feedback can I have, as well as rewarding those particular executives for sharing talent. And what are they doing to continue to groom talent in the depths of just because I have already a candidate, but what am I doing across my entire enterprise to foster that whole culture of the importance of managing talent so that it becomes integrated as a core business process. And that's the huge step of being able to do the breakthrough so that it is an enterprise-wide initiative and not just centric to that particular hospital or organization.
I think to build on Kathleen's point there and the point made about Generation Y, people will do that on their own in Generation Y without waiting for the company to build that career path. They will say, gee, I'm pigeonholed into an IT development path. I'm doing fine there, they're rewarding me, but you know, I'd like to do the sales end of things. And they're told, well, wait a year, wait until, well, they won't wait. This generation won't do that. And so if we're not nimble inside of an organization to build that career path and to move the person over, then that is, they're going to do it on their own. I would add to Kathleen's point that that there's also the levels of exposure versus true experience. A 1 month, seeing how someone else lives or works is an exposure, and then there's a full experience going there and actually delivering over the course of a business cycle. And those are nuances to work your way through in those career paths. So,
question here for Ed. You talked about culture change, and you also mentioned private company and 600 employees. Twofold question. Do you think being a smaller company provided easier path for culture change? And if you have gone through a transformation, how did you go about doing it?
I think our circumstance is probably a little bit more unique, certainly because at the same time that we were going through this cultural change, we were doing a lot of hiring. So we were able to select characteristics of folks that would fit better into a collaborative environment. And actually we had a set of guidelines for the interviewing that we went through to try and capture the right people into that environment. So we didn't have to start from scratch for all these folks. So, the other factor is that our executives really did band together to make this happen. So it wasn't just led by the CIO and our EVP of product, but also our EVPs in the sales side, on the marketing side, and certainly the CEO had to also agree to experience this and be okay with that productivity dip for some period of time and actually see the results. So we had a lot of folks at the VP levels going to these team level reviews to see what products were coming out. And to this day, that still happens. So it's a long process, but if you have those two things in place, I think you can do it. It's not just because we're a private company and smaller.
This is a question for Dr. Groves. In terms of developing high potential leaders in the company, in addition to like on-the-job technical development and training, do you see benefits in training them in things like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
It's interesting. I think there's certainly a lot of time management, daily kind of task management skill sets that are certainly quite valuable. One area I found is very important to supplement the on-the-job learning experiences that I spoke of, and we heard a bit today. Some of the assessment activities, and that is as leaders make the jump from individual contributor, as Debra mentioned, kind of managing I to we. One of the big transitions is how leaders tend to see themselves in managing and leading others, likely contrasts very sharply with how others view them. So this multi-source, common 360 assessment tool becomes a very powerful way to provide accuracy of how you see yourself, the issue of developing self-awareness. So I would see that as perhaps tied to some Stephen Covey and other more kind of pop management kinds of recommendations, but more so how I see myself in leading others. That's a big transition that a lot of first-time leaders have to go through. That I think is irreplaceable to supplement on the job learning experiences.
I can go without mine. Follow up on that question. Today we see a lot of people utilizing personality exams, analytical exams for new hires, individuals coming in, or even the development process. How much value do those add in today's environment? And do you benchmark it internally? Do you ask people who are already within the organization to take some of these exams to create benchmarks and see if individuals coming in fit into this environment?
So I'll take that one. So we see great value in doing some instruments. We've moved away from assessment centers, which typically are usually those all-day sessions going off-site to a consulting firm and doing a variety of different linguistic, science, math, interventions, inbox activities. And we've moved more to the behavioral interview assessments. So to test that internally, we have a vice president nomination process. So that's the first level where leaders or officers of our organization. And so they go through a very comprehensive 360. They go through a 2-hour behavioral interview with an outside consultant who really helps us just discern their competence, their readiness. And then from that, a detailed development plan is put together for the next year, and a decision of go, no-go with regards to their readiness to take on this new vice president role. And if it's a no-go, then what are we doing as an organization to support that leader in getting them ready for their next assignment? We use an instrument called Insights. It's out of Scotland, and it's a Jungian tool that is just a simple way to evaluate fit, because at the most senior level, fit is critical. I assume and I expect that you come to the table with technical competencies, but how are you as a leader? So for me, that is my filter that I'm looking for. And when I take an executive out to dinner as part of an interview process, and I'm spending 3 and 4 hours, I learn a lot, and I get true insight about their fit with our organization. Can they uphold our values, our mission, and most importantly, our guiding behaviors as part of their leadership? So we are constantly testing that, and we've seen really good correlation as we've tested that internally as well as external candidates versus the comprehensive assessment centers that we were doing for appointments about 3 years ago.
If I just might add to that, in these down times with companies hiring less, they've added more use of tools as a way to feel like they're managing the risk better. There's not a lot of evidence that that's actually happening, but it feels good because you've got a tool that comes back with a number and it feels very statistical. Most of those are built on very generalized models and not necessarily built right to the culture, which would be quite expensive. So I wouldn't, if you're thinking about going in that direction of a lot of extra tool work, it's something to think through a second time and perhaps head more in the direction where Deb and her organization is.
I have a quick question for Debra Canales. In your presentation, you drew my curiosity about something you said, and I can't draw back the words exactly, but the message was essentially, with the Catholic subculture in your company, there might be, and you didn't use the word challenge perhaps to spark innovation, or being Catholic nice was the term you did use. And I was curious about that because my understanding of Catholicism is that it has a very rich history, and of course it's very value-centric. And as a result of trying to innovate or get people to maybe perhaps move out of traditional ways of thinking, how do you touch upon the, I would say, the struggle between subculture of tradition versus maybe motivating by value, because I would imagine the subculture is very much ingrained in values, which is a deep root. How do you go about doing that?
So the legacy is deep and rich, and when I came to Trinity 5 years ago, trying to transform the culture to this notion of a bigger enterprise culture, because we had cultures and subcultures in every one of our hospitals and of course at our home office. But our vision was, how do we get to a common ground? And that's deeply rooted in our values, what we stand for. And so we embarked on a culture transformation effort that aligned our strategy with our structure. That was a 3-day event, and we've taken over 10,000 of our people leaders across the enterprise. And this experience, it is very introspective. So it starts with I. So what do I, in terms of my own self-reflection, is the first day. The second day is about my own department, the we, and how do I contribute as part of that. And then the broader team, the organization, and what do I need to do differently as part of that. It's all rooted in those guiding behaviors. That's where that work came from. But to make a pledge and a declaration that in order to be successful at Trinity Health, here's what it looks like, and here's how you will be evaluated, here's how you will be measured, here's what we stand for, and here's what we will reward. So you saw that bubble slide of the shift of where we need to go. We certainly celebrate the rich heritage. We're not moving away from that. We hire people who are not Catholic. I mean, it doesn't matter what faith or of any faith, as long as you can espouse and live our values. That's what's important. And that's why these elements of fit and focusing on who am I and what do I contribute in the organization, and continuing to reinforce that. And demonstrate that overtly across the enterprise of showing where people have been innovative, have taken risk, and still have a job. Because I will tell you, there's still fear in the organization, and that takes years as part of continuing to reinforce what you want, and to show that it is safe to be authentic and to be real and to take steps that maybe are outside my comfort. Because it's important to have a different perspective. That's how we learn and grow. And we're still practicing that. I mean, we're not there yet. And because there has been such a rich tradition, and sometimes a feeling of I can't let go of that. And we continue to put communicative elements in place to reinforce that and to show what do we want in terms of success going forward. So it's not easy. I mean, many of the panelists here today, the whole culture journey, it's years in terms of transformation. And that's the challenge I constantly get as an HR practitioner is what have you done for me lately? And I want the culture changed tomorrow. And it doesn't happen that way. So
that question and that part of the discussion just got my mind racing in what might be a really strange direction, but we've been talking a lot about talent management, organizational effectiveness in some regards. Debra's example was very much starting out as a holding company with a lot of small individual units who now make it the large whole. Well, is it possible to apply that idea or that model to, it's a global economy, by continuing the discussion of keeping innovation or commercialization in the U.S., are we in fact reinforcing silos on a different level?
Well, I can say that we struggle with sharing ideas and getting the most from town on a global level. We have, I personally have groups in London and Tokyo that report up to business decision support. And it's, what I'm supposed to do is create these global business processes, and specifically around master data and the creation of DVDs, because we sell them globally. And we all the time, we have people in other areas that they want to maintain this silo. It could be in Burbank or in Tokyo or in London. They've created these silos, they live by these silos, they're comfortable, and it's really hard to break that and to get them to think in terms of global processes and a global business. We're struggling with that all the time. Next month, we're actually going to, a team of 4 of us are going to go to London to work with the senior management there and say, look, you guys signed up on these global processes, but you're really not working, you're not really striving toward it. We need to work together in coming up with these global processes. And politically, it's going to be a very sensitive discussion. I mean, I don't know how, well, for us, it's a real struggle. We've got some experts here on both sides that probably teach me.
You also have to keep in mind for the truly great discoveries and inventions that, like I said, create platforms of new innovation. That is something that is not likely to occur across, boundaries on a global level, because the investment is extreme, the time length is extreme. You are not going to have people doing that level of development if it's open to anybody to get their hands on. So there will be in innovation some silos where we're talking about game-changing kinds of technology. On the other hand, the whole open source innovation movement is growing, and in some areas like software, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Let me build on it a different way, even though you might have thought that was an odd question or odd set of thoughts you're putting together. My observation, both as having managed teams that were located in 7 or 8 different time zones around the world, and having a diverse team that was located in one location, so persons with very different backgrounds in one location. The second setting, the diverse team in one location, got a lot more done than the global team, despite the technology that could bring us together by being in different locales. And so I think even companies in their structures have recognized this and said, look, we've got to stay into some, even though large regions, we've got to recognize that teamwork across these time zones is really, really hard. And let's be sensible about the way we organize. On the other hand, what I would highly recommend, and I think Kathleen would probably agree with this, that the more diverse a team you can get together over a topic to solve an issue, that team will outperform time and again teams that are uniform in their thinking, uniform in their style, uniform in their heritage and their origins. So I'd highly endorse the idea of diversity on a team and not get so worried about where they physically sit.
I think I'd like just to add just a couple of quick points around that both Tom and mentioned. I think the exchange of people going back and forth is very critical with a lot of cultures, especially in China and India. We found that to be the case, but we do have a lot of great tools that are making things a lot easier to communicate. Right? You do have Skype technologies that can be very effective, and if you couple that with the face-to-face exchanges on a regular basis, which does require investment and a commitment from the organization, that is a way that we found to have a little bit more effective collaboration.
Excellent. We have time for 2 more questions. We have one here and one in the back, and then we'll break for lunch.
Good afternoon. I work for a very traditional aerospace and defense organization. And I was hired, I guess, to solve the whole 550 issue that the company is about facing. I can relate to the whole Y generation, needs as you described earlier. I guess my question is, within the company right now, I'm working with my management team to help hire more kind of a set of people that are not reflective of the current organization. However, the various variables described in the corporate culture in terms of fit have been defined by the current organization and by people who've been in the organization for, let's say, 10 to 30 years. How does a company then attract the talent that they're trying to get in the company with a fit described by the existing corporate culture? And what would you recommend for someone like me, who's perhaps maybe 1 or 5% of the whole company population, to influence the kind of the set of characteristics that would influence who they hire next?
Who are you directing that to?
Well, I guess Debra, Warren, Kevin.
Yeah, I think, one of the first steps is, I don't know, in terms of your interface with your HR leader or as part of time with that senior executive team. So what is our vision for the future? What will that look like? What are we trying to become 5-10 years from now? And start to think about your current state, and then what's the bridge that's going to get you there? And what do you need to do to adjust those leadership competencies? And that's an exercise basically we went through to say, if we're going to be most trusted health partner for life, if we're going to lead healthcare reform, what type of organization do we want to become, and what type of leadership, and what do we need to do to get there? And given our current state and our assessment of our leadership team, the various functions that we have, what do we need to do different and go off and hire? And just have a strategic discussion first so that you can hear from those leaders, hear from your CEO with regards to what are we trying to transform, or are we? Because you may find that they want to stay with status quo. And I think for you to just share, here's what you get. So if we're going to be a player in the next 10 to 15 years, this is what we have to do differently. And at the end of the day, they have a choice. And it's your job as part of sharing what's that compelling business platform in order for us to achieve that. This is what it's going to take. But it appears that you're going to need to just start some fact-finding and some dialogue as part of a conversation is how I would approach it. And in fact, that's exactly what I did when I came to Trinity, to just kind of understand the landscape and what are we trying to become as a healthcare provider.
And I would just add to that, what I found in different contexts, healthcare and elsewhere, real rigorous needs assessment analysis that segments different parts of the workforce and looks at the different value proposition for what people want out of their careers can be very helpful. And in aerospace, maybe reflective of other industries, the value proposition for early career entrants, mid-career folks, and those baby boomers who are about to retire looks quite different. That's intuitive. At a conversational level, it's probably quite obvious to you and your colleagues, but to go through a more quantitative needs assessment for those three cohorts in your organization, that presents a much more powerful case for, we need to be much more inclusive moving forward of each of these perspectives as we make hiring decisions and try to go out and find talent to, as I think I understand your question, kind of be more youthful and responsive to Generation Y, what they bring to the table. And that's very consistent, I think, with what we've heard today. The data-driven argument for these human capital programs are really important.
We have one last question in the back of the room.
Question for Thomas. Regarding the technology, because you have both a tangible product and also a digital product, what similarities and what differences do you see between the supply chain? Because both digital, you have distribution, you have inventory, and you also have a product. What, do they work together well, or are they completely separate?
They're
different.
Originally, they were designed to work together with the existing supply chain infrastructure that was designed for physical product. But we quickly found that that didn't work. For example, with digital, there is no inventory. You create a digital clip, and then that digital, that digital file ends up at iTunes or Amazon, what have you. But there's no real supply chain in the sense that you have manufacturing, distribution. You do have distribution, but you don't have the manufacturing and the same sales channels. So our existing supply chain mechanism just completely failed the digital the digital side of the business. I shouldn't say completely, but it really doesn't hold well for the digital side of the business. So what we've done, digital act, that's the future. We're really putting a lot of our focus on the sale of digital product, and we believe that is the future. So what we've done is we've encouraged the digital teams to outsource as much as possible the development of the digital product, the distribution of the digital product, the marketing of digital product. Even though you could say that it's the same thing, whether if it's a motion picture, well, you got a motion picture on a theater screen, you got a motion picture on a DVD, you got a motion picture that's distributed digitally. The mechanism to distribute that is completely different. So what we wanted to do, initially we wanted the digital products to move along the same supply chain as the physical product. We realized quickly that's not going to work, but we can't change the supply chain for physical product. That would be virtually impossible without the detriment to the physical product. So what we're telling the digital businesses, go ahead, you need to move quickly, you need to move be able to move, change direction a lot faster than the physical product. Go out and outsource whatever you need to outsource and then we'll catch up with you guys, 2 or 3 years down the road. And then we'll try to change our supply chain to match you. But digital is moving so quickly, we can't catch up. So, and we can't stop, so we've got to let them just take off. Make your mistakes, and then learn from them. And they're making a lot of mistakes. But they're good, right?
Excellent. Would you please join me in thanking our panelists?